Alrighty, so no OBS today. I still have to figure some things out, and it may just be that I have to get a better computer to do that kind of stuff. Um, but there's some potential ways to do some more with what I've got. Um, yeah, the OBS might just need a more powerful RAM and hard. Well, I don't think hard drive's the issue. One of the things I could look into in the next couple days before I head out to Honolulu is go down to the makerspace and see if in the city uh, internet access is faster and bigger bandwidth at the makerspace, because I feel like that was part of the instigating factor for not being able to get the data to go fast enough, because uh, it was unable to get the stream steady, and I think part of that is just the workload that it does uh, recording all that data and trying to send it through. It might also be because the webcam on this laptop, I think the highest resolution this one pulls off is 420. I think I've got that wrong, but um, it's not it's not the usual resolutions, and so it may be confused by that. I did just get a webcam today in the mail. I haven't tried it out yet because I've been working on another project this afternoon. Um, the project for today, the project that I did today, has just taking the images, the photographs of the entry I'm putting in towards the Instructables Sweets Challenge or competition. So the project I made today was uh, the cheesecake-filled donut holes dipped in dark chocolate icing and sprinkled with freeze-dried strawberries crumbled up. Um, so I made a batch. I basically got the easy way to do this is you take a container of uh, buttermilk biscuits that you can get in like a Walmart or something. They're like the cans that when you pop them, they pop, and you've got the risen biscuits in it. If you take those and you cut them into quarters, or if you want to make a full donut and a donut hole, you get one of the cutters with a circle in the middle, and you turn the circles into the donut holes and the ring into the donut. But you got to heat up some oil to about 325 to 350. Most of my successes are around 325 Fahrenheit. 350 is really too hot, and you risk burning the exterior without actually cooking the interior. But if you go below 325, the oil soaks in too far, and it gets you a very greasy donut. Um, so I take the individual biscuit discs, I cut them into quarters and roll those quarters into balls, and then I drop them three at a time into the hot oil, and they'll stick to the bottom once I've dropped them in because they sink all the way down and they stick to the bottom. And once they let go and start floating, I usually give about a 10 count. Some of them will flip over on their own, but sometimes they're a little resistant. So you have to flip them over. And because they're spheres, sometimes they don't like to flip over. So you have to really work on a few of them. But you give about 10 seconds per side and see if they go a little bit past golden brown on the exterior. You pull them out, and I throw them into a pan that I have the graham cracker crumbs for making the crust on a cheesecake. And so I just stir those up and shake them up so that the graham cracker crumbs stick to the oil on the outside and form a. Because when you make the graham cracker crust for a cheesecake, you usually take the graham cracker crumbs and butter and you mush it in together. But if you have the oil from the frying of the donut and you uh, just mix the crumbs on top of that, and it's not an overly sweet donut at that point, so it's pretty good by itself. And then let them cool down a little bit, and then poke a hole in the side. And I use a ketchup bottle, like a grocery store, like a diner ketchup bottle, because it's got a long, thin nozzle for making a squirt of ketchup on something. And I fill that with a cheesecake uh, filling, and you do it while it's a no bake cheesecake filling. So you do it before it completely gels up, and you poke your hole in the side of the donut. You put your nozzle in there, and you squeeze in a little bit of a small amount of stream of it in there, and you let that set up inside the donut. And these are good for about a day. After that, the breading in the donut starts to soak up the cheesecake, and then it just becomes a mildly mushy donut. Um, but once you've done that, you set them aside for a second, let it set up, and then I mixed some dark chocolate uh, discs, the morsels that you can get for confection making, and then I took the dark chocolate, a little bit of milk, and a little bit of powdered sugar. I think I did like a tablespoon of milk and powdered sugar, and threw in something like 12 to 14 uh, large, well, medium discs, I guess I would call them, of the dark chocolate. Pop them in the microwave for about 40 seconds, 40 minutes. Oh, good Lord, that would be a horror show. 40 seconds, and take it out and stir it up with a spoon to a nice smooth consistency. And and then you put a dollop on top of, or you can dip your donut holes in it. The the graham cracker crumbs on those actually can interfere with the icing sticking to the donut, so it's easier to dollop on top of it. And then once you've done that, you let that set up for a little bit so the icing starts to crust. It's not really crust. It's the outside gets a little bit drier and it's not as runny. And then I took my freeze dried strawberries and I crushed them up and dusted them over the top of them. So I did that this afternoon, taking still photos at each step along the way. And I'll compile those into an Instructables uh, uh, tutorial. And half the fun of that one was just the way I tell the Instructable. So I start out with, like, a can makes 10 biscuits. So if I cut each biscuit in half and roll each half into small ball, uh, six biscuits will make 12 donut holes. So that's what I was doing. But for me, half the fun was to go like, okay, so you take your six biscuits, you cut them in half, you roll them into the balls to make the donut holes. You drop them in the oil and let them cook at this temperature for about 10 seconds on a side. And you pull them out, and then you take your tray of 10 donut holes, and you put them in while they're still warm with the breadcrumbs, and you mix them around so that they're nice and evenly coated. Then you put your 8 donut holes on a plate and let them cool. And then you mix up your filling, your cheesecake filling, in a bottle, and then you fill up your donut holes, and then set each of those six on a plate, and let the cheesecake filling set up. And when they're ready, you make the icing for your donut holes, and you dip those in and set your 4 donut holes on a plate, and get your freeze dried strawberries, and you crumble those up and sprinkle them on top. And when you're all set and done, you have these 2 beautiful donut holes. So yeah, I did a series of photos where I could tell that joke story of how the mysteriously decreasing number of donut holes happened. Um, but I did in fact eat them that way, so it's not a lie. It's true. I don't know that it's sitting as well as it could, but that's because my system doesn't handle stuff like that particularly well. But it was still kind of fun to do. It was really good icing, by the way. That dark chocolate that I got, I don't know if it I don't think it's like a Toll House. What was the name of that company? It's like I think it's like a Roadhouse or something like. I don't think it's Toll House, but it's decent dark chocolate and add a little, I think, a tablespoon of milk and a tablespoon of powdered sugar. Heated it, and it turned out really nicely. That's a really good dark chocolate icing. And so, like when I crumbled up the freeze dried strawberries and had some of the graham cracker crumbs around left over, like just mixed that all together into a combination, and that was pretty tasty too. um, yeah, the leftovers were like making them in a small batch like that was it's always a little difficult to do. I even went and got as little of each thing as possible to do it. The cheesecake filling is hard to do because it sets up quickly if you do small batches, and if you do too little of it, you can't get the bottle to squeeze out a nice stream in the middle of your donut. Um, I have, by the way, tried to do larger donuts like that. Um, Putting the hole in the donut is important because if you try to do a solid donut that you could fill later, the heat of the oil doesn't penetrate far enough in to cook the center of them. And so you can get like too hot on the outside so it gets scorched and like a toast like taste, and undercooked on the inside with a doughiness to it, which is not the way you want to go. Putting the hole in the middle, like if you're going to like they must have a trick for when they do jelly filled donuts to get that to work right, because I have never been able to make like a solid round um, jelly donut at home just putting one of those whole biscuits in a fryer like that. I've never succeeded that way. There must be like some really tight temperature controls and like a really careful dough recipe construction that behaves that way, because I've never been able to make that work. But so that's what I was doing today. I didn't opt for OBS today. I switched over to doing it this way yesterday halfway through because OBS just wouldn't stop freezing. I go back and I watched those videos and it recorded and posted all 16 minutes, but it didn't do it well when it was trying to do it live. And so I don't think I can do that right now. I'm gonna play with the webcam I got in the mail today in the next 24 hours and figure out if that helps, because I feel like the resolution of this webcam may be too primitive for OBS to handle uploading live to YouTube. So I'm gonna see if that makes a difference. I'm gonna see if the internet speed at the makerspace works better because they're in a city and I'm rural right now. So that might be part of it. And if neither of those things are factors, um, it may just be that my computer's not up to it, which is, it's unfortunate, but it's not permanently disabling. I can record at a higher resolution and post at a higher resolution. Um, I just can't do it live. So I might be able to just work around some of that. Um, and one of the ways is to maybe use the Premiere, where I can record the files beforehand with OBS, because I'm pretty sure I can do that. And then um, upload them as a Premiere so I can do the chat on the side. That's a possibility. It doesn't go as a live, but I may do that. Well, the other thing I was thinking of with the other web camera that you actually sent me, which thank you, by the way, I appreciate it, is I may not have to use OBS to show you what's on my screen because if it's a top mount webcam like that, I can take it off and point it directly at the screen. So I can show you something on my screen without having to resort to a piece of software that's going to bog down the processor or the streaming speed. So I can kind of work some of that around now. There are ways I can do some of that live. I do think I will probably in the next 6 months, I'm looking at maybe upgrading my computer setup because this laptop does a lot and it does pretty well for me for some things. But like this, this isn't moving it around on my lap. This is literally that the screen on this has fractured from the base and it's only anchored by one point now. The screen, like, I can't actually close my laptop without the screen like trying to slide off and break itself even further. And I've only had this thing for about a year and a half at this point. Not even a year and 3 months. And so it's like this laptop has had its issues on occasion, and um, it's unfortunate. But I mean, I've put some strain on it too. I've pushed its limits. I mean, it's a laptop, and I've done a fair amount with it. It's actually done pretty good for some things, but I don't think when they built this was a $300 laptop. So it's not like a 1,000 or a $3,000 laptop meant for live streaming. Like if you want to do live streaming, like high definition video live streaming of 3D first person shooter games, you don't do it with a $300 laptop. Your beginning price entry point for something that'll work that way is usually around $1,000 to $2,000. So I've managed to do a fair amount with this. It works fairly well with HitFilm editing 720p video. I haven't done too much with a 1080. So I'll see, like, I'll test out 1080 recording with the webcam and see how the editor handles that in comparison. And it's done a really pretty good job of handling the weight load of audio editing and video editing at high definitions while running other things in the background. Like I've had these browsers open, except for maybe once in a while where there's an update and it auto shuts down, which is annoying. I've had these browsers open pretty much nonstop for the last 2 months. And so when they're running in the background and I'm using editing software for audio and video at high def rates, like that's a load on I believe this is a 3.2 gigahertz processor with, I forget what the RAM is, but it's a medium range of RAM processing. And I, I don't think it's a solid state drive. I think it's a spinning disk drive for a hard drive. I don't know how many cores it has. It might be a 2, might be a 4. I don't think, well, I'm not sure it's a 4. So it's not a beefy gaming computer, but like yeah, weighs 65 pounds. Oh, it's a gaming PC. It's not a laptop. I'm like a 65-pound laptop would be a bit brutal. I don't know that I want 65 pounds on my lap. Um, but no, this is a laptop partly because I knew I needed something I could take with me when I traveled across the country, and so um, my other laptop is nowhere near this powerful. But I still used it for early video editing before this one. It bit it when its fan died, and it couldn't cool itself off, so it refused to boot up the operating system because it was in danger of burning out the system. So I found the replacement for the fan, and I got into it to a point where I could probably replace the fan. I was checking to see what the fittings and the style of the fan were so I could order one from Amazon. It was like a $12 part. I can get a $12 fan and replace it myself. So I took it apart at the makerspace, and in taking it apart, the latch that secures the battery broke. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" So, I may have to use it plugged in until I can, rig a replacement for latching the battery in and make it work. But once I do that, it still doesn't change the fact that also while doing that, the tab that, connects the ribbon for the keyboard, the piece that folds down and holds it in place broke. Now I can jerry rig a replacement for that too, but I mean, at this point, all right, fine, be that way. It's just like you're just determined to be broken at that point. The $12 part, I can replace this part easily, dude. Why do you have to break all these other little pieces that can't be replaced while I'm doing that? But I can jerry rig it back together and play with that one on the side. That one's a Windows. I think I got that one upgraded to an 8.1. And I kind of like 8.1 a little bit better than I like 10. And I think somewhere I have a Windows XP laptop that just barely can still connect to the internet. But it's it's got enough processor to be a functional laptop. It just doesn't have a lot of RAM, and it doesn't have enough capabilities for RAM upgrades to be useful. I can't even get it to use a Windows 10 or a one of the more recent runs of Linux because it's not up to it with the RAM it has. I think it has one or two in RAM and can't be upgraded past four, I think. And so, some of the more recent operating systems take more oomph than that to run RAM wise. And so it's like at that point, it's really for occasional hopping over to the internet if I'm away from a laptop that's otherwise useful to me, or for writing on. I might even be able to get it to run like an Inkscape or a GIMP, so I can do photo editing or something like that. I don't know how much RAM it's going to take to do those, so it might not work for those. I also have a MacBook, an old MacBook. I think it's running Lion because that's the most recent operating system, a Mac OS that it can handle. It can't handle past that, and so like with Mac OS Lion, you can't run most um, modern internet browsing. So it's using what was the old one? I want to say it's like Safari, maybe Netscape Navigator, but it's just barely functional. And again, I can do a lot as just like a computer without internet on it. Like I could do video and audio playing around because they have the processing power and in some cases enough to be able to do some very simple work on those types of things. But they don't do high end work. So writing simple graphics like icons, and I might even be able to edit things like thumbnails for my channels on them. I would like to maybe upgrade to I usually like to have a computer for each of the operating systems. Like one for Mac, one for Windows, and one for Linux. But all of my Macs are old, and on their last legs to be useful for the modern connected technologies. Like I could still use them indefinitely for what they were doing before the internet was a thing. But yeah, so I might at some point look into upgrading into an Apple. One of the things that I have to think about is Instructables contests. If you have the chance to enter them, enter them. Um, they periodically have contests where you can win an iPad or a MacBook or uh, a good quality digital camera um, or a laser cutter or a 3D printer. And like, I'm going to enter some of those contests to see what I can get. Because, I mean, that would be cool to be able to win some of that stuff. Now, the odds, well, they're only slightly better if I enter. If I don't enter those competitions, my odds of winning are 0. If I enter those competitions, my odds might be 1 in a 6 million or something like that. They're probably better than that, but that's still a chance. And that chance is not entirely random. It's not really chance. It's like if I actually start making projects that are ooh ah kind of neat projects, then my chances go up of being able to walk away with one of those prizes. So, I mean, it can help me streamline and figure out how to make better tutorials, but it can also earn me the chance to upgrade my capabilities for stuff. So I do want to see if I can get one of those cameras. It wouldn't hurt to get one of the ones where they're doing smartphones. Because my smartphone here, let's see if I can pull out my smartphone here. My barely smartphone. This is an LG. That's real size. Well, actually, no. On the camera screen there, right there, that's much bigger than. So this is how big it is next to my face. It's not a really big camera or a big phone. The camera I think is 1 to 5 megapixels. I might not even be 5 megapixels. Let's see if I can find the data on this. My phone. So let's see if it's got the information. And it is Android, but it's barely Android. That doesn't work very well. Hardware information. It's LG L34C. It's the name of the game. Okay, locations, apps. What is my camera running? Can you tell me that or not? I'm going with probably not. So camera, normal, settings, image size, 2048 by 1350. So it's a 3:2 ratio. White balance. What's the resolution, you butt punch? Come on. All right, so it's not telling me that. I think I looked up at one point this model and it said something like a 5 megapixel max. So like they do have like newer iPhones or Androids sometimes as wins on the Instructables contests, and like an iPad even would be good for like I would almost guarantee you that the iPad has a better camera than my phone, and I could probably do a lot more with the iPad that I can do with my phone. Although I don't know if it would have a good GPS system for me. I don't know if iPads are running that like a connectivity that way. Like I can text message and stuff on my phone. It's a pay as you go too. So um, the only reason I'm using that as a smartphone, honestly, is because I don't use a phone enough for it to be important for me to get a plan. Like I have enough uh, minutes for texting and data on this phone that like since I got back in July from my cross country trip, I have bought $30 worth of minutes once. And so like $30 of minutes in 8 months, like I don't think I'll find a plan that good. And so it's like it doesn't make sense for me to go invest in a $1,000 phone and load it with like a what is it, a $60 a month plan? Doesn't I know I could theoretically get one of the newer smartphones and load it as a pay as you go phone, and so I could go that route potentially, but it's still in my mind that like people are paying $500 to $1,000 for some of these smartphones, and I'm like, rather have something with a keyboard for that price. Like I can type stuff with a keyboard. I can use the mouse and the keyboard and hotkeys and GIMP to edit photographs and make graphic images that I can use. Like, I don't think I could do half the stuff I can do on a laptop with a smartphone. And when I'm creating things, the more capabilities I have, the more valuable I see it being. But with that in mind, I can't strap a laptop into a Google Cardboard and make 3D VR files to explore and play in. I can do that with a smartphone. So it is on my mind. Like the idea of getting a good smartphone to make a VR headset out of Google Cardboard or some of the equivalent things where you're just strapping your large cell phone to your face. That's something I wouldn't mind playing with. Like that's an avenue of creative play space that I would enjoy exploring. But so yeah, my smartphone capabilities aren't great. My laptop, my laptop's actually pretty good for the price I got it for. This would normally be like a $500 to a $600 laptop. So it's between the low end and the gaming laptops, but it's still hitting the edge of its capabilities sometimes when I push. Now, part of that's just the way I use it. Like I put a lot of workload on this. Like part of I think the reason OBS is struggling is because I've got so much else running on it at a given time. Like last night, I felt like it was doing all right when it was just OBS, but I had the the browser open to live stream through YouTube, and I had BuildBox open at the same time to try to demonstrate what that did. And like the browser, I've noticed, especially lately, the browsers I'm using are just like if you go in and you open up the desktop analytics of what your computer's doing, like my browsers are using megabytes of data per second. I was like, why are you using so much? Like it shouldn't be like 1,200 megabytes of. I was like, I think it's just because like data streaming browsers and uh, a lot of the like I do have ad blocker, but it doesn't catch everything. I feel like a lot of people are loading things with the animated advertising, and they choke things up too. So I bet you if I close down everything other than one window for YouTube and one for OBS, and that was it, I might be able to get away with it. But the moment I try to pull in another, like if I try to pull in BuildBox or open up a graphic on a Windows image viewer or something like that, the workload is going to stress out the processor and the RAM too much. So I have to kind of really look and see what makes the most sense in the long run. But one of the things I did want to say when I was trying last night was I have found an article. See if I can link it here in the chat. Um, what is the best alternative to BuildBox? So here it is, a list of, I want to say it's, how many of them? It feels like it's, I thought there were more. I thought there was more information. I think it was like 10, 12, might even be 20 different game engines that you can use to build games in. And so I'll post that over here. And some of them look interesting. I don't know what the rights to games created in them are. So like if you used, like, I know a popular big one is Unity. And like I don't know what the digital rights are for anything created in Unity. Like if I make something, well, it's Unreal Engine's one of them too. So like you'd have to go to each website, but one of the ones I looked at was this thing called, I think it's called Stencil. It's Stencil. And I checked that out the other day. They do have a free version, but it's like it comes with the company's name watermarked on whatever you make. And I don't know what other kind of limitations they put on what you can do with it. It looked like it was like the free version was super limited. So, but I did notice that talking on the forums for BuildBox, somebody said like the what is it, IG Maker, the BuildBox equivalent that RPG Maker has. It might have been on the forums for RPG Maker, but somebody said like the IG Maker would be a good program, except for it's $60 to get it, and there's already a free equivalent, and they named Stencil that free equivalent. Now, turns out it's not as free as all that. Like you can play with it for free, but I think the moment you want to really build something serious with it, it ends up being like $100 a month. So it starts to get comparable to BuildBox at that point. Whereas IG Maker is, I think, a single time $60 payment. So I still think IG Maker may be the better option. I have heard from some people that it gets glitchy if you're building a really big game with it. But I like most of what I want to make with it are going to be simple, fun, older style games. They're not going to be first person shooter, big complicated, like a 4-hour RPG side scroller kind of game. This isn't going to be Legend of Zelda. It's not going to be. It's definitely not going to be something like trying to remember. Like, I'm more likely to go with something like a Super Mario kind of like you could have fun just playing those levels for years. Like I know you can beat the game in like an hour. I think there's somebody who's beat the thing in 20 minutes or something like that. Like those speed runs. Yeah. Like I don't mind if you build a game that you could beat on a 20-minute speed run. Because when I played Mario, I never played it with the idea that like I want to get through it as fast as possible. Like I remember Mario 3 playing that game and thinking like, oh, like I could replay these levels over and over and over again and just have fun going through them, hopping around, scoring high points and seeing if you could beat the last time you went through that level. And like, oh, here's this hard part. Like this time, just get through the level to beat the level. The next time, go back and see if you can find the hidden section with a special item or thing in it. And like, I was I was having a blast with that game for years. I don't think I've ever beaten Mario. Well, maybe I beat Mario 3 once. But the goal wasn't like to be victorious. It was to have fun playing it. And like that's the kind of game I want to play. And that's the kind of game I want to build. Is a game where you can just play it over and over and over again and have fun playing it with other people. And like it doesn't get old and it's not like, well, you're playing it over and over again because you haven't beaten it yet. Like beating it shouldn't be the only goal you have for a game. At least I shouldn't. Like that's not the way I play games, and that's not the games I want to design. So I feel like the IG Maker might be able to get me through what I need. Um, so I may end up purchasing that. I'm going to explore. I think my RPG Maker uh, free trial has expired or will expire in the next week. So I'm gonna putz around with that a little bit before it does that if it's still not expired yet, um, and just get a sense of what I could do with it and how I can play with that a little bit further. And then I may free trial the more recent one. I know XP is only $25. And if I feel like I could do a lot with that, $25 is a better investment, I think, than the I think $80 that MV costs, $80 to $90. So I may just end up sticking with XP for a while and seeing what I can do with it. And by the same token, like if I can, I'll use BuildBox as much as possible before my use ends in September. But once September rolls around, I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is going with IG Maker. I'll free trial IG Maker when BuildBox runs out, I think. And then if I like what I can do with IG Maker, I may end up paying the $60 for it because I think that's a better one-time investment. Um, yeah, other than that, like I think I briefly touched on what I was working on the board game and video game yesterday, even though like the OBS attempt failed. Um, I think in the follow up video I made for that was on like the regular live uploads. I discussed a little bit of what I had already done, where I'm going right now. So zombie game's not done, but I'm working on it. I also am throwing out some very simple um, sort of clicker games, and just to see what I could do with BuildBox. which I think is best suited for very simple style games because it's got templates that you're sort of forced to use. And those templates, they have some variety and you can bend them to do things more interesting. But like it's a hard bend. You have to really, really push the capabilities of what BuildBox can do to do anything interesting beyond very simple arcade style games. Like you could make it do asteroids fine. You could make it do Galaga just fine. You could make it do something like Mario pretty good. There's some things you have to really push it to do. Like it would almost be easier to do like you can do Q*bert, you can do something like a basketball game where it's just like that basketball you see at like Chuck E. Cheese's or I guess Dave and Buster's, where it's a hoop and it rolls down 8 balls and you have a certain number of seconds to try to get as many balls through the hoops as you can. You can do a game like that really easily. But I don't think that BuildBox has much more to it than that. So I'm going to try to use that up as much as possible. And then I'll see what I can do with some of the other game building because I think that's something I want to dabble with more. So what am I doing for March? March, I think what I'm planning on at this point is I've got a lot of little simple projects that I'm working on right now. So like the update, I'm going to write up the Instructables and submit that to the competition. I'm going to experiment with the new webcam. Thank you. And see what I can do with that. I want to make better channel art for my channel. And I want to dabble with seeing what I can do with recorded and edited videos. So if I do something like a demonstration of what I've done with BuildBox, I'm pretty sure using OBS as a recorder rather than live streaming with it, I should be able to do some of those things I want to do, where I can have a banner at the bottom talking about what I'm working on at that point with information on the side. Yeah, that's I still have the link to the drivers I think open. It's one of those tabs I still got sitting open on my browser. So I'm gonna give it a go tomorrow. I'm pretty sure that's everything I need, but I think between that, OBS as a recorder, and my editing software with HitFilm Express, I should be able to make good quality recorded videos. Live stream is still sort of stuck on this, although if that web camera works all right for live streaming without OBS, then I will at least upgrade this a little bit. And I might be able to convince my laptop to work with a lav mic so the audio is better. So like I could still do some upgrade to the quality of the live videos as well as the recorded videos. So that's something I want to experiment with over the next few days. And then I'm going to be catching a bus to the plane to the Honolulu and walking around in that area for a while. So I might do if I do updates while I'm traveling in Honolulu, they're probably going to be short and possibly pre-recorded. I'd love to do them live, but I don't know how often I'll have access to Wi-Fi. And so that might make it a little more difficult. But it's only for a week. I can handle that. And then once I get back in here, I think I'm going to take a week to tidy up on a few other projects before I jump back into doing uh, like weekly content updates, projects, creative content. So I do want to get back into that though. It's like I don't want to let it languish too long. I may do like when I get back from Honolulu, I may do simple lifestyle and blog daily updates for a week. Kind of find my stride on what I want to do with that, and then I'll figure out how I want to do subsequent sets. I'm pretty sure I like the a week each. So basically, a week for each category item, and uh, like a couple weeks at the end of the 7, 8 weeks of content to finish up or update things, and then a little downtime to do other uncategory projects before moving on to um, a new set. But yeah, this next set should be a fiction book, a regular movie, maybe. I have to look through what my plans were. A card game instead of a board game. I may look into doing a service of some kind instead of making a product this next time around. I'm not sure. And then uh, cooking related. Then instead of art, it's going to be music making. Not sure if I'm going to be any good at that, but I'll give it a go. And then after that, I guess it's just another video game design, maybe a choose your own adventure. I might do the YouTube video RPG. So, like a single player RPG game done video style. Um, it's similar to the choose your own adventure, but with a couple choices being made by dice roll. So something like that, and then like I like exploring the different types of things I can create, and I think that would get me through to so January, February, March, April, May, June. So by the end of June, I'll be done the second round of these projects. That would leave me to get started on the third round in July. And I think between July 1st and the end of August, I'll be still traveling. So that might be a little tricky, but I'll figure it out. So that's sort of where we are right now. Like the right now happening stuff is a few simple one-off projects that I'm working on right now in the next few days before I head out for my flight. And then maybe some travel vlogging while I'm doing that. And then a week of some more simple projects before I kick back into creating weekly projects again. So I do think I'm going to pre-record Tuesday movie night because I realized I'll be on the plane when I'm supposed to be updating that. So I may just do that today or tomorrow. Record it and then post it to run then. So that's where we are right now. Tomorrow's big project is going to be playing with the new webcam and see what I can do with it. I will probably leave that here. I don't want to take that to Honolulu with me. It'd be a shame if I just got it and broke it while I was traveling. So I'll leave that here. But hopefully that opens up some capabilities of like at the very least it should make it possible for me to point the camera at the screen so I can show things happening on the screen and give me better resolution capabilities for these and other live videos, as well as potentially recording videos from it. So, alrighty. Tomorrow we play with the camera, see what we can do with it. All right. Have a good night, and I will see you tomorrow. All right. So where are we at? There we go.